우리 교역자 한 명이 면담하는데 교인들이 실제로 정신적으로 어려움 난 사람이 너무 많다. 어떻게 하면 좋겠습니까? 이런 질문을 했어요.
This one assistant minister came to meet with me, and as we were counseling together, he asked me, it seems that a lot of our church members are suffering from a lot of mental disorders. How can we help them?
사실은 고치려고 하면 불가능하다는 걸 알아야 된다.
And I said, if you want to try to begin to heal this, you have to first acknowledge that it's
그걸
impossible
알아야
to
고칠
heal.
수 있죠.
You need to know that in order for you to bring healing.
왜 불가능하냐?
And why is it impossible then?
각인된 것을 바꾸면 되는데 바꿀 시간이 없어요.
We just need to simply change the imprints that we have inside of us, but you don't have the time to change that.
분명히 잘못된 게 각인됐단 말이에요.
And absolutely, the incorrect things have been
이걸
imprinted.
바꾸면 되는 거예요.
We just need to change that.
근데 이 사람이 안 바꾸는 거예요.
But that individual doesn't change it.
바꿀 시간이 없어요.
And they don't have the time to do it.
계속 딴 거
They keep doing
염려해야 돼요.
other things instead, filled with different concerns.
딴 거로 자꾸만 고민해야 돼요.
They need to constantly be worried about other matters.
그러면 날이 갈수록 심해지는 거죠.
Then with the passage of time, it will only become worse.
나는 뭐 기도해도 왜 안 되느냐 하지만 사실은 안 바뀐 거예요.
People ask, why is that even though I pray, it doesn't change anything? It's because they haven't changed the
그렇다면
inherent things.
그것만 알면 어떤 면에서는 간단한 거죠.
But if you just simply know that, then in some ways, it's the most simple matter of all.
옛날에는 그 군대에서 사람 많이 때리고 막 그런 일이 있잖아요.
In the past, in the Korean military, there were many cases where people were beaten.
우리 동네 아는 우리 인대는 형이지. 그리고 이 사람이 군대도 가기 전에 젊은 사람이 술만 먹으면 정신이 돌아요.
And it was in my neighborhood when I was growing up, but there was an older person who, whenever he got drunk, would be very violent.
그래가지고 말이지 군대에서 뭐 또 그런 또 술 먹고 사고를 내 뭐예요.
And so even after he went into the military and he enlisted in the military, he got drunk and he caused some problems there as well.
얼마나 얻어맞았든지 죽음 직전까지 간 거예요.
And so this person was beaten so much that they had almost a near-death experience.
그 옛날에 막 그랬거든요.
And it was a case at that time.
그리고 병원에 입원까지 하고 퇴원했다니까요.
And he was even admitted into the hospital and then finally discharged.
얼마나 맞았든지 정신병이 나와버렸어.
And he was so severely beaten that his mental disorder was completely
그게 뭔
cured.
말인가니까요. 지가 사로잡히던 생각은 나와버린 거지.
And so what that means is he had seized hold of this one thought, but he just let it go at that time.
그렇다면 폐에서 고칠 일이 아니고 우리가 성령으로 고치는 게 진짜잖아요.
So we shouldn't be able to change those things simply by beating someone. It needs to be healed by the Holy Spirit.
오늘 뭐 예배할 때도 마찬가지입니다.
The same goes for us today as we give our worship.
여러분이 꼭 아셔야 되는 부분이지요.
And this is something that you must know.
이거 하려면 영적 서밋부터 먼저 돼야 돼요.
In order for us to have summit and 25-hour answer, we must first become the spiritual summit.
서밋은 최고의 자리에 올라갔다 그 말이에요.
Summit simply means that you're at the apex, you're at the top of everything.
간혹 대통령 보고 서밋 이렇게 하잖아요.
And at times we refer to our top officials like the president as a summit.
또 이제 어떤 분야에 최고의 자리에 올라가면 서밋이 됐다 이거죠.
And if you're the most reputable expert in a particular field, we call you the summit as well.
그런데 영적 서밋이 먼저 안 되면 이거 되고 난 뒤에도 어려워요.
But if you don't first become the spiritual summit, even after you achieve that summit position, things will become very difficult.
그래서 아까 뭐 내가 비유를 들었습니다만은 조금만 여러분 제대로 기도하면 이 응답이 와요.
So as I gave you the example earlier, if we just pray a little bit, this answer will come to us.
근데 이제 많은 과학자들, 정치인들 뭐 이런 훌륭한 분들이 많잖아요.
We have a lot of very distinguished individuals among us, scientists, politicians, and the like.
이분들이 왜 이걸 안 믿나 하면은 좀 추상적이잖아요 이게.
Why don't they believe this? Because in some ways it's very
손에 잡히는
abstract.
것도 아니고.
You can't, it's not tangible.
이제 과학자들은 과학에 뭐 보여야 그걸 이제 믿는단 말이에요.
And just as scientists go there by nature, they have to be able to have it founded in science to be able to see it in order for them to believe it.
당장 여러분 정치인들은 현실적인 걸 해야지 무슨 눈에도 안 보이는 걸 붙잡고 하느냐 이렇게 되는 거예요.
And even politicians by nature, they're very realistic. They don't want to hold on to things that are not tangible.
그런데 인간은 막상 영적 존재거든요.
However, we see that at the base, all of us humankind, we are spiritual beings.
그래서 놓치는 겁니다.
And that's why we keep losing hold of that.
그래서 여러분이 조금 예배할 때 진짜 예배만 드리면 영적 서밋 돼요.
And as you give your worship, if you just simply give that worship, you can become the spiritual summit.
그리고 예배만 안 드리잖아요. 자꾸 딴 거 섞이가지고. 근데 진짜 여러분이 조금만 기도하신다면은 영적 서밋이 되는 거예요.
But we don't give that dedicated worship. We keep mixing other things instead. If you're able to give that worship, you will be able to stand as a spiritual summit.
그래야만 이 환경을 바꾸고 현장을 살리는 겁니다.
Only then can you change your environment and save the field.
내가 서밋이 안 되는 이상은 살릴 수가 없어요.
If you don't become the summit, you cannot revive anything.
이거는 아무 눈에 안 보이는 거기 때문에 어떤 면에서는 누가 뺏어갈 수도 없죠.
And this is not visible to the eyes. And because of that, in some ways, people can't take it away from you.
이게 굉장히 이 눈에 안 보이는 사실인데 사람들은 이걸 잘 안 믿죠.
This is an invisible fact, and that's why many people don't find this believable.
중요하게 보지 않습니다.
They don't place importance on this.
당장 이게 문제면 이거 중요하게 보죠.
Immediately, when they're faced with a certain environment or field, that becomes their problem.
그러나 당장 하나님은 안 보이잖아요.
And immediately, we see that you can't see
근데
God
우리
with your
생명을
eyes.
주관하시는 분은 하나님이신데 우리는 그것보다는 이게 더 중요하게 생각이 되는 거예요.
Though God is the one who governs over our lives, for us, our immediate concern is our environment and the field.
그래서 그 부분만 알고 여러분이 조금 기도하시면은 현장을 바꾸는 일이 벌어져요.
If you're just aware of this and you just change this a little bit, you'll be able to change your field.
이걸 어떻게 하면 되겠냐는
Then
거죠.
how can we do this?
아무도 잘 믿지 않는 이걸 어떻게 하면 되겠습니까?
This is something that not many people believe. Then how can we carry this out?
사람들 이걸 몰라 그래요.
People don't know this fact.
나의 각인 뿌리 체질 바꾸는 거는 이것밖에 없다니까요.
This is the only way for us to change our imprints, roots, and nature.
병이 들었다는 말은 병들 수 있는 게 각인된 거거든요.
The fact that you have an ailment or a sickness means that the conditions for that sickness are already inside of you.
뭐 일부 예배 때 좀 나올 겁니다만은 지금 정신질환자 급증하고 있어요.
And I'll speak of this more than the first service, but we see a surge in the number of people with mental disorders.
어제 무슨 자료에 보니까 작년 올해 정신이 숫자가 한 10배 늘었대요.
And I saw
10배로.
statistics in a report, but last year coming into this year, we have a tenfold increase in the
그러니까
number of people with
전부
mental disorders.
원인은 여기 있단 말이에요.
And the source, all of that lies here in the imprints, roots, and nature.
그래서 우리는 영적 서밋 되는 이 각인은 예배로 바꾸는 겁니다.
And that's why we must change our imprint to become the spiritual summit through worship.
이토록 예배가 중요한 겁니다.
This is how important worship is.
그래서 성막, 회막, 장막 이런 말들을 보세요. 그 중심으로 예배로서만 각인된 거 바꿀 수 있어요.
And that's why we have the tent of meetings, the tabernacle, the booths in the temple. All of that simply signifies the importance of worship.
그러고 난 뒤에 예배에 은혜 받은 만큼 내가 개인 집중할 수 있잖아요.
And as much as we are blessed and as we receive grace from the worship, we're able to concentrate personally.
이때 뿌리 내리는 겁니다.
And that's when we become rooted inside of
그래,
this.
각인이 잘못되어 있으면 그것도 뿌리 내리겠죠.
And if you have the wrong imprints, even those wrong imprints will become rooted.
그래서 우리는 현장에서 이제는 무시기도 하게 되면 이게 완전히 체질이 되는 겁니다.
And if we are able to do continuous prayer inside of the field, this becomes our nature.
그래서 여러분들이 어떤 좀 인내심을 가지고 가족들이나 아픈 사람 도울 때도 이 부분을 도와줘야 되는 겁니다.
And that's why you need to display some patience. Even when you help others or help people who are sick, you need to concentrate on imprints, roots, and nature.
사실 여러분도 모르게 오늘 이 시간에는 내 각인된 게 바뀌고 있는 거거든요.
And in fact, unbeknownst to us at this very hour, the things that are imprinted upon us are being changed.
그래서 내가 그거 붙잡고 여섯 동안에 어떻게 조금 기도하면 이게 뿌리 내리고 무시로 기도된 체질이 되진단 말이에요. 이때부터 영적 서밋이 되는 응답이 오기 시작하는
And
거예요.
if we hold on to that and pray for the next 6 days, unbeknownst to us, this becomes rooted inside of us. And as we do continuous prayer inside of the field with this becomes our nature. And with that, we stand as a spiritual summit.
이렇게 되지면 아무것도 아닌데 세 가지 축복이 와요.
And when this happens, though this seems like nothing at all, 3 blessings follow.
여러분 오늘 기도한 만큼 이 축복을 하면 이게 복음이 그냥 복음이 아니고 복음화가 되는 겁니다.
As much as you pray, this gospel doesn't just remain a simple gospel to you, it becomes
쉽게 말하면
gospelized.
그리스도 능력이 이제 임하기 시작한다 말이에요.
Simply put, the power of Christ becomes
이걸
manifest.
누가 알겠습니까? 뭐 믿지도 않지 사람 불신자는 안 믿는다니까요.
And who can be aware of this? They don't even find this believable. Unbelievers don't
그래서
even know this
시대 갈수록
exists.
재앙과 영적 문제를 막 급증을 하는 겁니다.
But that's the very reason why, as time passes, spiritual problems and crises only surge in
이걸
numbers.
여러분이 누리고 있으면 따라와요.
And if you are enjoying this, these things will naturally follow.
보좌가 내 것이 되는 보좌의 축복이 온단 말이에요.
And you then receive the blessing of establishing this throne where that throne becomes mine personally.
가만히 있는데 여러분에게는 이제 서밋은 아닌데 서밋의 축복이 온단 말이에요. 이걸 뭐 서밋 화라는 겁니다.
Though we remain still, we find ourselves in the position of the summit, even though we may not have.
서밋인데 서밋 축복이 없으니까 서밋 화가 안 된 거죠.
We see that because you are the summit, though you're not experiencing and enjoying the blessings of the summit, it's not manifested in your life.
보좌의 축복은 있지만은 내게 임하지 아니하면 보좌화가 아니잖아요.
We have the blessing of the throne, but if that does not come upon us, it's not manifested in our lives.
그래서 속지 마셔야 됩니다. 여러분 기도하는 여러분 한 분이 굉장히 중요합니다.
So you must not be deceived. Though you are just one person in prayer, you are so very important.
어떤 분은 자녀가 말이요 신앙생활을 아버지가 잘하는데 평생을 신앙생활을 안 해, 이 자녀가요.
And so there was a case where I saw that the parents were living very good walks of faith, and yet their child never lived their walk of faith.
그 아버지가 자녀 위해서 기도를 많이 했고 아버지도 괜찮은 자녀도 괜찮은 사람이에요. 그런데 교회만 안 나와.
And the child's father, he was a very good believer. He was constantly in prayer for his child. But even the child, he's very good-natured. He just never came to church.
그 사람이 신앙이 얼마나 있는지 저는 모르잖아요.
Now, I don't know how much faith this person has.
근데 뭐 우리가 보기에는 예배 드리는데 관심이 없다는 보니까 신앙은 없는가 보다. 이렇게 생각했지.
But I thought to myself, because that person never came to church, I just figured that they're not concerned with worship. They're not living their walk of faith.
그러다가 그 아들을 장례식에서 봤어요.
But I just so happened to meet with that son at a
아버지가
funeral.
돌아가시는데 장례식 하니까 이제 우리가 갔는데 그 아들이 있는 거예요.
His
아버지가
father.
돌아가셨으니까.
His father passed away, and because his father had passed away, of course he was at the funeral. I happened to meet with that son there.
그런데 그 뒤로 이 사람이 바뀌어버린 거예요.
But since then, he began to change.
그래서 나는 사람이 참 괜찮은 사람이니까 우리가 장례식을 해줬으니까 고마워서 이렇게 반응을 보이는가 보다 이렇게 생각했죠.
And so I simply thought to myself, because he began to take notice to give worship, I thought to myself, well, because he's a very good person, since we gave the funeral service, perhaps he wanted to reciprocate.
이 사람이 그 정도가 아니고요. 나중에 아버지보다 더 잘 믿어.
But it wasn't a matter of reciprocating
야.
our kindness. He didn't want to repay that. He later on went on to have even greater faith than his father.
그게 어떻게 사람 마음대로 됩니까? 우리가 보면서 야 정말로 돌아가신 그 장로님의 기도가 저게 끝나는 게 아니고요. 이 나타나는 거예요.
And that's not something that we can determine for ourselves or we can change by ourselves. But through that we saw that the prayer of that elder, his father, it came to fruition.
심지어 그 돌아가신 장로님들 그 중에 아들 되면 쟤는 이상하게 믿음이 안 생긴다면서 늘 그랬다고요.
And his father, the elder, would often say, "It's so strange. I've never seen my son have faith."
모세의 기도처럼 모세가 죽은 이후에 그 응답이 후대에게
But just like
그렇게
the prayers,
고백했잖아요.
just like the prayers of Moses, just as he made this confession, after Moses passed away, all the prayers were answered upon his posterity.
자, 이 영적 서밋의 축복이 어떻게 나타나는 거 아닌가? 그냥 끝나는 게 아니고 이제 서밋 운동이 일어나는 거죠.
Then how is this blessing of the spiritual summit then manifested? It's not just a simple summit. It becomes a
그리고
summit
운동이라니까
movement.
막 큰 무슨 바람도 운동이지만은 이후에 일어나.
And we hear the word summit, we think that it's something very grand, like some sort of wind blowing. But you see that all this happens afterwards.
그래서 여러분들은 영적 서밋의 자리에 있는 것이 중요합니다.
And that's why it's so important that you find yourselves in the seat of the spiritual summit.
어차피 여러분은 하나님의 응답 받아야 될 사람이기 때문에 영적 서밋의 시간표 속에 있는 겁니다.
In any event, you must receive the answers of God, and so you must remain within the time schedule of the summit.
그 응답 받아야 되니까 또 받을 거니까 영적 서밋에 자세를 갖추는 겁니다.
Because you must receive answers of the spiritual summit, and you will come to receive that answer. You must have that attitude and behavior fitting to the spiritual summit.
여러분 때문에 여러분을 만나는 사람이 사실은 세상적인 것 각인돼 있어요. 바꿔줘야 됩니다.
And we see that all the people that we meet with in the world, they're completely imprinted with the things of the world. As you meet with them, you must change that for them.
아무리 좋은 사람이라도 하나님의 것 말고 다른 걸로 각인돼 있다니까요.
And the person you meet, they may be very good people, but they're imprinted with things that are not of God, but of other things
그거
instead.
바꿔주는 게 최고의 사역입니다.
Changing that is the greatest ministry.
예, 그러려고 하면 여러분이 이 축복을 먼저 누리는 거죠.
But in order for you to do that, you must first enjoy this blessing.
요셉이 영적 서밋이 되니까 가는 곳마다 특히 왕에게 있는 생각을 바꿔버려요.
When Joseph became the spiritual summit, wherever he went, and particularly with regard to the Pharaoh, he changed his thinking.
그래서 우리에게는 이 서밋 운동하면 늘 나오는 결론이 있습니다.
And that's why whenever we partake in the summit movement, there is a conclusion that we always constantly arrive at.
눈에 보이지 않게 성삼위 하나님의 역사가 일어나기 시작합니다.
Unseen to the eyes, the works of the triune God begin to arise
여러분의 영혼 속에.
upon your soul and spirit.
그래서 이걸 바꾸는 겁니다.
And that's why we change our imprint roots in nature.
그래서 암 고치는 사람도 진짜 고치는 사람은요. 각인된 걸 바꾸자는 거죠.
And the people who get healed of their cancer, even they, what they do is they change their imprints.
얼마 전에 그 자료에도 유튜브에 나왔잖아요. 나이 많은 사람이요. 암 하나를 고치는 거예요.
I happened to see this on YouTube recently, but there was a very elderly person who was healing people, curing people of their cancer.
근데 가만 들어보니까 일리가 있어요.
And when I was listening to what he was saying, there were some grounds to it.
이 사람 몸 속에는 암이 걸릴 수밖에 없는 게 있다는 거지. 그거 바꿔준다는 거예요.
And what this person was saying was, this
일리 있는
person,
얘기 아닙니까?
every condition in their body is suitable for the cancer cells to metastasize. We
그러면
need to heal that.
영적으로도 마찬가지입니다.
It's the same case spiritually speaking.
우리가 뭐 성삼위 하나님 이렇게 하는데 세상에서 그걸 누가 합니까? 그러나 우리의 영적인 걸 각인을 바꾸는 일이에요.
We speak about the triune God. Nobody in this world even understands what that means. But what that does is it changes inherently the things that are imprinted inside of us.
자, 이제 이게 각인된단 말이에요.
And this needs to change for this to become imprinted.
보좌의 능력.
The power of the throne.
이거 세상 사람들이 알지 못하. 그러나 이게 안 되면 그 치료를 할 수가 없어요.
The people of the world do not know about this, but if this does not take place, healing cannot take place.
드디어 우리는 힘이 없는데 하나님이 역사하게 된 게 시대를 바꾸는 응답이 일어나는 겁니다.
Though we are powerless, because God is at work, that's why the answers to change the age arise.
그래서 여러분은 중요합니다.
And that's why you are important.
오늘 예배 중요합니다.
And that's why today's worship is
사람 말
important.
듣지 마시고 여러분이 중요합니다.
Do not heed the words of other people. You are very important.
금방 응답이 안 오는 게 아닙니다. 기준은 이겁니다.
It's not that answers don't come
오고
immediately.
있잖아요.
The standard lies here.
단지 이거란 말이에요.
It's coming. It's simply about our imprints, roots, and nature.
만약에 어릴 때 제대로 되면 세계 바꾼다 이 말은 어릴 때 이 제대로 이 각인돼 버리면 뭐 틀림없는 거죠.
That's why we often hear if you have the proper things equipped when you're younger, you can change the world. That simply means you have the correct imprint, roots, and nature when you're young.
지금 이 시간부터 여러분에게는 큰 하나님의 능력, 은혜의 시간이 영적으로 각인되는 축복이 있기를 예수 그리스도 이름으로 축복합니다.
I bless your name, Lord Jesus Christ. Starting from this very moment,
기도하겠습니다.
God's great
하나님
power.
오늘 하루 종일 하나님의 비밀을 누리는 축복이 있게 해주옵소서.
And grace may fill you abundantly. Lord, we thank you so much. Would you work upon us that we may be filled with your mystery starting today?
많은 사람에게 각인된 어려움이 하나님의 능력으로 바뀌는 역사 일어나게 하옵소서.
And may your works arise, Lord, so that all those who are imprinted with hardships will find themselves transformed.
예수 그리스도 이름으로 기도하옵나이다.
In Jesus Christ's name we
아멘.
pray. Amen.